Mr. Speaker, pursuant to the House Resolution 26, I call up the bill H.R. 2 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
Clerk will read the title of the bill.
H.R. 2, a bill to repeal the job-killing health care law and health care-related provisions in the Health Care and Education Reconciliation Act of 2010.
We think this law should be totally repealed, and that's why we're doing this. Let me speak to the fiscal house of cards that is represented by this law. Now, the minority is saying this reduces the deficit. Just look at the letter from CBO to the Speaker Boehner. It reduces the deficit by $143 billion over 8 years, $230 over 10. It does that if you manipulate the CBO. I've heard charges of Enron accounting. The only Enron accounting that's been employed here is the previous majority gave the CBO a bill full of smoke and mirrors and made them score that.
It is interesting to hear this attack on the CBO numbers that came out when many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle just 9 months ago, when the CBO was reporting deficit numbers and the cost of the bill, were singing CBO's high praises. And we don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to debate a bill that thankfully will go nowhere in the Senate and would certainly be vetoed by the President. However, the Republican majority is entitled to use its time here as it chooses, and while we believe we should be doing that focused on jobs, perhaps this debate will clear up many of the myths and misinformation about the health care law that was signed by President Obama.
We're told the bill would protect the uninsured, yet all it does is roll them into Medicaid, a low-performing program that has resulted in more people turning to the ER for their medical needs.
New rules allow the Republicans to do this, but it is going to cost trillions of dollars to our budget, and it's going to cost greater suffering for the American people. So it's a wrong course of action. Let's not repeal this bill. It will hurt Americans, it will hurt our economic competitiveness, and it will hurt the fiscal condition of this nation, and I encourage a no vote.
If this law is constitutional, if Congress has such broad power, our limited federal government will have become limitless, and all without changing our Constitution or the approval of the Americans whom it protects. It is not just for the courts. It is our duty as a Congress to pay attention to the Constitution and its limits on its powers.
Healthcare repeal is the epitome of fiscal irresponsibility, and it counters our most basic American values, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We lose life when insurance companies can freely drop those who are sick from coverage. We lose liberty when our seniors have to choose between medications and groceries. And we lose the pursuit of happiness if we return to the days when only job security guaranteed health security.
All the charts in the world can't wish away the CBO letter of January 6th of this year, which says that the premiums will go down in the employer market, that people on average will pay less in the individual market, and that this legislation will reduce the deficit and the debt over the next 20 years. Again, that is the call from the nonpartisan experts we have. We shouldn't be substituting our judgment for theirs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields the balance of his time to himself.
Mr. Speaker, I think we've already fairly well established the fact that when you strip out all the budget gimmicks and all the double counting, Obamacare is a budget buster. But let's take a look at where we are as a country. We have a debt crisis coming in America, Mr. Speaker, and the primary reason why we have this mountain of debt is because of our already existing health care entitlements, which have a massive unfunded liability. So what did the previous majority do? They just put 2 new unfunded open-ended entitlements on top.
We need to shut off the funding that can be used to implement or enforce Obamacare, and we need to do so persistently and consistently. And in the process of doing that, we're marking time through 2011 and 2012. That also gives us time to have the debates on the individual standalone pieces of replacement. And then a presidential election is already underway. I can tell you, being from Iowa, it's already underway. And someone will emerge from that, and I expect that they will be for repeal of Obamacare. I hope so.
And the new majority in the House of Representatives intends to stand squarely behind the American people. The American people have said no to expansive government. They've said no to high costs associated with government taking over one private sector industry after another. And so that's what we're going to do. It is step 1, phase 1, beginning tomorrow, but it's a journey that you will see a strong, committed House conservative majority stand behind. We aren't going to just check the box off. and say that we've had one vote and we're going to move on to other topics. We're staying full square behind the repeal of Obamacare and our commitment to defund it going forward.
Millions of Americans screamed out loudly that they didn't want this. And so one of the first significant votes that I will cast as a congressman will be to repeal Obamacare.
Well, I brought a copy of this bill, and in case you don't know what the title was, let me tell you. It says, resolved that the bill from the House of Representatives, H.R. 3590, entitled, quote, an act to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to modify the first-time home buyers credit in the case of members of the armed forces and certain other federal employees and for other purposes. That's the health care bill. Now, it was started on a false bottom. There is so much stuff. We take control over vending machines, restaurants, and one of the most insidious things is, you've already been reporting on it, waivers. If you're a friend of the administration, you get a waiver, and it'll cut your costs dramatically. If you're not a friend, you don't get the waiver. You won't compete with the friends of Obama. You'll go out of business. Government shouldn't have that kind of power. This isn't about cronyism, capitalism. Crony capitalism has got to stop. This bill's got to go.